I think we should settle this before the wedding." The entire room went silent. The Christmas music playing softly near the fireplace suddenly sounded as though it were coming from another house. Even the crackling flames seemed to lower their voice. Ethan's father reached inside his navy blazer and removed a thick white envelope. He placed it on the polished oak table and pushed it slowly toward me. It stopped several inches from my plate. Nobody spoke. My daughter, Emily, looked from the envelope to me. The warm smile she had carried through most of the evening faded. Ethan leaned back and folded his arms. He wore the confident expression of a man who believed the most difficult part of the conversation was already over. His mother lowered her wine glass and watched me with careful curiosity. There was no name written on the envelope. Not mine. Not Emily's. Only one word had been printed neatly across the front. Family. I picked it up. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I think you'll understand why this is necessary." His voice was calm. Polite. But there was enough pride beneath it to fill the entire room. I did not answer. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a stack of legal documents. Before I could read the first page, Ethan's father spoke. "Please read all of it." I nodded. I had spent 38 years in the United States Army. I had opened mission briefings before sunrise. Read orders that sent soldiers into dangerous places. Delivered letters to families whose lives would never be the same. Signed promotion papers. Signed retirement documents. And stood beside too many flag-covered coffins. Opening an envelope during Christmas dinner should have been easy. But the expressions surrounding the table told me these pages were carrying more than legal language. They were carrying assumptions. And assumptions have a dangerous way of exposing the people who make them. I turned the first page. For exactly 2 minutes, nobody said a word. My name is Richard Walker. I was 72 years old at Christmas. Most people who met me assumed I was simply another retired old man trying to stretch a modest pension until the end of the month. I never blamed them. My Ford pickup was 20 years old. My winter coat had a repaired zipper and worn elbows. My boots had been resoled twice. I drank coffee at the same diner every Tuesday morning. I cut my own grass. Changed my own oil. And repaired things long after other people would have thrown them away. I never cared much about appearances. The funny thing was that most assumptions people made about me were wrong. What very few people knew was that I had retired from the United States Army as a 4-star general after nearly 4 decades of service. My military retirement income alone was a little over $28,000 each month. My home had been paid off for years. My late wife, Margaret, and I had built a large investment portfolio slowly and carefully. We owned property, trusts, education funds, and more financial security than I could reasonably spend during the rest of my life. But comfort had never felt like something worth advertising. Especially after Margaret died. She used to repeat the same sentence almost every Christmas while wrapping presents inside our living room. "Richard, if you ever want to know someone's character, let them believe you have nothing." Back then, I thought she was simply being philosophical. Years later, I realized she had been warning me. Emily had begged me to spend Christmas with Ethan's family. She called 1 week earlier. "Dad, please come. It would mean a lot to Ethan." I thought Ethan usually spent Christmas skiing. He changed his plans. "Why?" She hesitated for just a second. "He wants both families together before the wedding." That sounded reasonable. So I accepted. I did not tell Emily that I had already noticed changes in Ethan. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would make a father immediately demand that his daughter end an engagement. Only small moments. The kind of moments people dismiss individually until they begin forming a pattern. Ethan judged restaurants by whether they offered valet parking. He noticed expensive watches before he noticed kind people. He spoke differently to waiters than he did to business partners. Whenever he visited my house, his eyes moved across the old furniture with polite disappointment. As though he could not understand why anyone would keep a chair after a newer one became available. He was never openly vicious. He was quietly dismissive. The kind of arrogance that learns to hide behind smiles and good manners. Emily either did not notice, or she noticed and kept hoping love would correct it. That Christmas afternoon, I deliberately wore my oldest brown coat. The zipper had been replaced years earlier. The cuffs were faded. One sleeve had been repaired by Margaret herself. She used to joke that I would probably be buried in it. I smiled at the memory before climbing into my old Ford. The drive across Charlotte took approximately 35 minutes. Modest neighborhood slowly gave way to large brick homes. Perfect hedges. Luxury vehicles. Wide lawns decorated with white Christmas lights. Every house looked prepared for a magazine cover. Ethan's parents lived at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. Their home was beautiful. Successful without appearing ridiculous. Emily reached me first. She wrapped both arms around me. "I am so glad you came." "So am I, sweetheart." Ethan appeared behind her. "Merry Christmas, Richard." He always called me Richard. Never Dad. Never Mr. Walker. Just Richard. I never corrected him. He shook my hand. His eyes moved briefly toward my coat. "You know it's freezing outside." "It is. You should let Emily buy you a decent winter coat." Emily immediately looked uncomfortable. "Dad likes that coat." Ethan laughed. "Well, everyone deserves an upgrade eventually." I smiled. "So I've heard." Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon, roasted turkey, and fresh pine. Family photographs covered the walls. The fireplace was glowing. Everything appeared warm and normal. Ethan's mother welcomed me politely. His father shook my hand firmly. Unlike his son, he looked directly into my eyes. Not at my coat. Not at the old truck parked outside. My face. That small detail remained with me. Dinner began easily enough. Vacation homes. Stock markets. Luxury cruises. Wine collections. Commercial property. I listened much more than I spoke. A person learns very little while waiting for his own turn to talk. Eventually, Ethan began telling a story about one of his co-workers. He laughed and said, "I told him, if you are still broke after 65, you probably made bad decisions your entire life." Several people chuckled. Someone nodded. Then Ethan glanced toward me. "I mean, retirement should be comfortable if people plan ahead." I calmly cut another piece of turkey. "Planning matters." "It certainly does." His mother offered me a sympathetic smile. "It must be difficult living on a fixed income these days." Emily shifted in her chair. Before I could respond, Ethan answered for me. "Richard manages." Manages. An interesting word. I smiled. I had not come to defend myself. I had come to observe. Margaret had been gone for 6 years. But her lesson remained alive. Let people believe you have nothing. Dessert arrived. Coffee followed. The conversation slowed. Then Ethan's father walked to a sideboard, removed the white envelope, and placed it before me. "I think we should settle this before the wedding." The first page read, "Premarital property agreement." For 2 minutes, the only sound was paper turning beneath my fingers. I did not sign. I did not object. I placed the documents back inside the envelope and folded my hands. My silence seemed to confuse everyone. Ethan smiled. "I'm sure you understand. It's fairly standard now." His mother nodded. "We're only protecting family assets." I looked at her. I believe every family should protect what it has worked to build. Relief crossed Ethan's face. He believed I had agreed with him. His father did not relax. He continued studying me. As though he suspected the rest of the room had missed something. Emily stared at her coffee. I could almost hear her heart breaking. She had always hated conflict. Even as a child. Seeing her that way reminded me of another Christmas, many years earlier. Emily was 8 years old. Margaret was still alive. Every child in the neighborhood had a shiny new bicycle. Bright colors. Multiple gears. Perfect paint. Emily wanted one desperately. Money was not a problem. Margaret and I could have bought the most expensive bicycle in the store. Instead, Margaret purchased an older bicycle at a church charity sale. The frame was scratched. The basket was crooked. The paint had faded. Emily tried to hide her disappointment. Margaret smiled. "Ride it for 1 week. But everybody else has a new one." "I know. Why can't I?" Margaret knelt in front of her. "Because I want you to learn something before life teaches it the hard way." 1 week later, Emily came home smiling. My best friend didn't care what bicycle I rode. Margaret kissed her forehead. "Exactly." Then she looked at me. People who care too much about appearances usually reveal themselves before you even ask. That lesson stayed with me. Especially after cancer took Margaret. Cancer does not negotiate. It does not care how many soldiers you commanded, how many medals you earned, how many battles you survived. It simply takes. The army prepared me for war. Nothing prepared me to walk into an empty house after 50 years of marriage. For months, I placed 2 coffee cups on the counter before remembering. I would hear something amusing on television and turn toward her chair. Silence answered every time. Eventually, I stopped reaching across the bed. Stopped expecting her voice in the kitchen. Stopped leaving space in the closet. But I never stopped hearing her wisdom. After Margaret died, I decided I would not change my life merely because I could afford to. The old truck remained. The old coat remained. The same house remained. Friends asked why. My answer was simple. Everything I own still works. Military service had taught me something similar. When I graduated from West Point, an instructor told us, "Rank is borrowed." At 22, I did not fully understand. At 72, I understood perfectly. Every rank, every office, every title, every salute, eventually belongs to someone else. Character is the only thing you carry away. That knowledge kept my feet on the ground even after I received my 4th star. People imagine generals living glamorous lives. They do not see the birthdays missed, the anniversaries celebrated through satellite calls, the funerals, the young soldiers buried, the decisions that return in dreams decades later. The stars on my shoulders never made me better than anyone. They only reminded me how much responsibility had been placed there. That was why I rarely discussed my career after retirement. I did not want strangers thanking me whenever I ordered breakfast. I preferred conversations about fishing, weather, baseball, grandchildren. Life felt lighter without rank sitting at the table. Emily met Ethan nearly 3 years after Margaret died. She called me one Saturday afternoon. I heard something different in her voice immediately. "Dad, I met someone." I smiled. "Oh? I think you'll like him." Parents hear that sentence with equal parts hope and caution. 1 month later, she brought Ethan to my home. He arrived carrying a homemade pecan pie. That impressed me. He shook my hand firmly, looked into my eyes, asked questions about my garden. For several months, I genuinely liked him. He worked hard. He had built a successful commercial real estate company before turning 40. He treated Emily with affection. He laughed easily. Nothing appeared wrong. Then success began changing him. Not suddenly. Gradually. The first moment happened in a local steakhouse. An elderly waitress accidentally spilled water near our table. She apologized repeatedly. Before I could reassure her, Ethan sighed. "Can we get somebody a little quicker?" The woman's face changed. After she walked away, I said, "She seems overwhelmed." Ethan shrugged. "If people cannot keep up, they should not do the job." Emily looked uncomfortable. I changed the subject. Months later, we were driving through my neighborhood. Ethan looked through the window. "Emily, your father should sell this place." "Why?" "He could move somewhere nicer." "I like my house," I said. Ethan laughed. "No offense, Richard, but this neighborhood peaked 30 years ago." I smiled. So did I. He laughed harder. He believed I had made a joke. I had not. The comments became more frequent. He admired watches by their price. Judged people by their cars. Spoke about wealth as though it measured discipline and poverty as though it proved failure. Once, while standing in my garage, he noticed my old toolbox. "You could afford better equipment if you planned your finances." Emily looked confused. "Dad has always been careful with money." "I know." Ethan smiled. "I'm just saying retirement catches up with everyone." I closed the toolbox. He had no idea my investments produce more each year than I could comfortably spend. He assumed. I allowed him to. Not because I enjoyed deceiving people. Because assumptions reveal more than questions. 3 weeks before Christmas, Emily called. "Ethan's parents want everyone together." "They seem pleasant." "They are." She hesitated. "I just want everything to go well." I heard uncertainty. "Is something bothering you?" "No." The answer came too quickly. A father knows. But I did not push. After the call, I opened Margaret's cedar chest. Inside were letters, photographs, Christmas ornaments, and the old brown coat she always teased me about. I lifted it and spoke into the empty room. "Well, Maggie, I suppose we're about to find out what kind of family our little girl is marrying into." By the time the prenup appeared beside my coffee cup, Margaret had already been proven right. The test had never really been about money. It was about respect. The envelope was only making the answer impossible to ignore. I removed the documents again. The pumpkin pie remained untouched. Steam rose from the coffee, but the warmth had vanished from the room. Ethan leaned forward. "So, what do you think?" His tone sounded friendly. Rehearsed. Confident. "I think legal documents deserve careful reading." "Exactly." His mother nodded. "We paid an excellent attorney." "I can see that. It protects everybody." "I believe it protects several people very well." My calmness reassured them. Emily looked relieved. Only Ethan's father remained watchful. He had not touched his coffee. Ethan continued. "I've seen too many marriages end badly. So have I. My parents worked their whole lives for what they own. They should protect it. I respect that. I knew you would understand." He smiled. I smiled back. Everything he said sounded reasonable on paper. The problem was not the document. The problem was the story underneath it. Most of the agreement described Ethan's assets. His business. Investment accounts. A vacation condominium in Myrtle Beach. Retirement funds. Then I reached the section describing Emily. Current assets, minimal. Expected inheritance, unknown. Future financial contribution, limited. I stopped. Not because I was offended. Because I realized whoever prepared those documents believed my daughter entered the marriage with almost nothing. That belief had not appeared by itself. Someone had presented her that way. Emily cleared her throat. "Ethan." He looked at her. "I thought we were signing this after Christmas." "We are?" "I didn't know Dad would see it tonight." His mother answered. "We felt families should not keep financial secrets." I nodded. "That is a reasonable principle." Emily looked at me. "I'm sorry. You have nothing to apologize for." She looked close to tears. She believed I felt humiliated. She believed the room was quietly discussing how little her father had accumulated. The truth was I had not felt embarrassed once. I felt curious. Ethan's mother attempted to change the subject. "Richard, Emily says you are retired." "I am." "What did you do?" "I served in the army." "Oh." She smiled politely. "My brother served in the National Guard." "That is honorable service." "How long were you in?" 38 years. Her eyebrows lifted. "That is a considerable career." It was. "What rank did you?" Ethan interrupted. "Mom, military people never like talking about themselves." He laughed. "Richard is very humble." I smiled. He had unknowingly prevented me from answering. Across the table, his father noticed. The evening continued, but small cracks kept spreading. Ethan picked up the gift I had wrapped. "This one is from Richard." He shook it. "It feels light." "It is." Inside was a handmade wooden keepsake box. I had spent nearly 3 weeks building it. Black walnut. Hand-sanded. Finished with natural oil. No factory could have created another exactly like it. Emily smiled immediately. "You made something." "I did." She opened it slowly. The grain shimmered beneath the Christmas lights. Inside the lid, I had carved one sentence. "Family is not built by money. It is built by showing up." Emily covered her mouth. "It's beautiful." She stood and hugged me. "I love it." Ethan examined the box. "It's nice." Nice. Only nice. His mother admired the craftsmanship. His father turned it over carefully. "You made this yourself?" "I enjoy woodworking." "No visible nails. Hidden joints." He smiled for the first time that evening. "My grandfather built furniture this way." For one moment, something genuine passed between us. Respect. Not because of rank. Not because of money. One craftsman recognizing another. Later, Ethan opened a designer watch from his parents. It cost several $1,000s. Everyone admired it. He held it toward me. "Beautiful, isn't it?" "It is. I've wanted one for years." "I'm glad you received it. You don't wear watches." I lifted my sleeve. An old military field watch rested on my wrist. The crystal was scratched. The numbers had faded. It still worked perfectly. Ethan laughed softly. "You should let Emily upgrade that, too." I looked at it. "I don't believe I could." "Why?" "It still reminds me of someone." Ethan did not understand. Emily did. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. After dinner, we moved into the living room. A football game played quietly. Dishes moved inside the kitchen. Ethan poured another drink. "You must admit retirement can be stressful." "It can. My advisor says people underestimate how much they need." "Some do. I've been telling Emily we should handle more of your expenses." Emily immediately interrupted. "Ethan, he doesn't need." I gently raised one hand. "It is kind of you to think about me." Ethan smiled. "I don't want you struggling." "Thank you." Despite everything, part of me believed his concern might be genuine. Misguided. Wrapped inside pride. But genuine. The danger of arrogance is that people often mistake it for generosity. Ethan's father eventually walked onto the back porch. A few minutes later, I followed. Cold December air greeted me. Christmas lights reflected across the yard. He stood facing the darkness. Without turning, he said, "You were an officer." I smiled. "I was. I can usually tell." "What reveals it?" "The posture." I chuckled. "I have tried to lose it. It never leaves." He turned toward me. "What rank?" There was the question Ethan had interrupted. I considered answering. Instead, I said, "I retired satisfied." He nodded. "I understand." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he surprised me. "I don't believe you've told my son everything." "No." "I don't believe you've told Emily everything either." "No." He looked through the window toward our children. "Sometimes children only see what we allow them to see." "They do. They are good kids." "They are." He lowered his voice. "But my son has become too impressed with success." I said nothing. "I've noticed it." Disappointment entered his voice. "I was hoping tonight would prove me wrong." There was sadness inside his eyes. Not anger. The specific sadness only another father recognizes. At that moment, I understood I was not the only parent evaluating Ethan. His own father had been watching. And he did not like what he had seen. When we returned inside, the envelope remained on the coffee table. Emily sat on the edge of the sofa, twisting her engagement ring. Ethan stood near the fireplace, trying to appear relaxed. His mother collected empty cups. His father sat quietly. I picked up the documents. "I've finished reading them." Ethan smiled. "So?" The agreement was professionally prepared. Every asset was listed. Every contingency considered. Legally, I had no complaint. As a father, I had several. "May I ask a question?" "Of course. If Emily signs this tomorrow, what exactly will she be protecting?" Ethan looked surprised. "My family's assets." "I understand." "My business." "I understand." "My investments." "I understand." "My retirement accounts." "I understand." He smiled. "I've spent 15 years building everything I own. I respect that." "Then what is the problem?" I looked directly at him. "The problem is not what you are protecting. The problem is what you are assuming." The room became silent again. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" I tapped the section describing Emily's finances. "This agreement states that my daughter enters this marriage with very little." The attorney had estimated her net worth at less than $80,000. I almost smiled. Not because it was amusing. Because it was spectacularly inaccurate. Ethan shrugged. "That is basically true." Emily looked at me. "Dad?" I turned toward her. "Sweetheart, have I ever discussed my estate with you?" "No." "Have I shown you my investment accounts?" "No." "My trust documents?" "No." "My retirement income?" "No." She looked embarrassed. "I never asked." "I know." I smiled. "And I have always appreciated that." Ethan crossed his arms. "I'm not sure what this has to do with the agreement." "It has everything to do with it." His mother spoke carefully. "We only want to prevent future misunderstandings." "I admire that." "Then why are you objecting?" "I'm not objecting to the agreement." Everyone looked confused. "I'm objecting to the assumptions used to create it." I reached inside my coat. Not for a wallet. Not for a checkbook. I removed a thin leather folder I had carried for years. Inside were emergency contacts, medical information, military identification, and several documents Margaret had insisted remain close. I placed it beside the white envelope. Emily looked at it. "I've never seen that." "You never needed to." I opened the folder. The first item was a simple blue identification card. My retired military identification. I slid it across the table. Ethan picked it up. His expression remained unchanged for several seconds. Then his eyes stopped. He read the line beneath my photograph. Then read it again. The color slowly disappeared from his face. He looked at me. Then back at the card. "General?" Nobody answered. His mother took the card. She adjusted her glasses. Then froze. "Oh." Emily leaned closer. Her mouth opened. "Dad?" Ethan shook his head. "No." I smiled gently. "Yes." His father spoke quietly. "I thought so." Every person turned toward him. Ethan stared. "You knew?" "Not exactly." He looked at me. "But I knew he was not telling us everything." "You asked his rank?" "I did." "He never answered." "Because he did not need to." Emily's voice trembled. "Dad, you are a general?" "A 4-star general." Tears filled her eyes immediately. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You never asked." "I would have wanted to know. I wanted you to know me." She covered her mouth. "I had no idea." "I know. I'm sorry." "For what?" "I thought you were simply—" She could not finish. "An old man?" She nodded through tears. I smiled. "That is exactly what I wanted you to see." Ethan remained focused on the card. "Why would you hide something like this? Why would I advertise it?" He opened his mouth. Then closed it. There was no answer. His mother asked. "So you've received a military pension all these years?" "Yes." "How much?" I hesitated. Ethan's father interrupted. "It does not matter." I nodded. "He is correct." But Ethan's voice had become urgent. "How much?" I met his eyes. "A little over $28,000 each month." Complete silence. His mother's cup shifted against its saucer. Emily stared at me. Ethan looked as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. His entire picture of me had collapsed in less than 30 seconds. But the complete picture had not yet entered the room. "There are two more things you should see." I removed several folded documents. Trust summaries. Not confidential account statements. Only enough to explain what had already been arranged. I prepared these after Margaret died. Emily took the first page. Her hands trembled. "What?" She looked up. "Dad?" I nodded. "The house. Already inside your trust." "Since when?" 3 years ago. "You never told me." "You did not need to know yet." She turned another page. "The lake cabin? Also yours. The investment accounts? Those too." She looked overwhelmed. I wanted everything arranged while I was still alive and capable of making careful decisions. Ethan's breathing slowed. He was attempting to process numbers that no longer fit the story he had created. "There are education trusts for every future grandchild." Emily began crying again. "There are charitable funds." I pointed toward another section. "And enough investments that, if managed responsibly, you will never need to fear retirement." Nobody moved. The attorney's estimate that Emily owned almost nothing now looked absurd. She was not entering the marriage empty-handed. She was entering with more financial security than anyone in the room had imagined. I looked toward Ethan. I never intended to discuss any of this tonight. He could not meet my eyes. But when someone records assumptions about my daughter inside a legal document, I place the prenup on top of the trust summaries. I believe the complete picture deserves to be seen. For the first time all evening, Ethan's father smiled. Not because of the money. Not because I had surprised everyone. Because the truth had finally entered the room. The envelope had done exactly what he wanted it to do. It had revealed much more than assets. It had revealed character. No one spoke. Every sentence that had sounded harmless earlier suddenly felt dangerous. The fireplace became the loudest sound inside the house. Ethan lowered himself onto the sofa. The confidence had disappeared. He rubbed both hands over his face. Then looked at me. "I owe you an apology." I did not respond immediately. 38 years in the army taught me that the first apology is not always the honest one. Sometimes it is only embarrassment reacting to exposure. I wanted to know which apology this would be. "What are you apologizing for?" Ethan blinked. "I judged you." "Based on what?" He glanced toward my brown coat hanging near the door. "The way you lived. The truck. The house. The coat." He swallowed. "I assumed that if someone looked poor." He stopped. I completed it. "Then he probably was." Ethan nodded. "Yes." I leaned back. "That is an honest answer." Emily wiped her face. "I've tried to tell you this for months." Ethan closed his eyes. "I know." "No." She shook her head. "You heard me. You just never listened." His mother spoke next. "Richard, I owe you an apology too." "You owe me nothing." "I do." She lowered her eyes. "I kept asking about your retirement. You assumed I needed help." She nodded. "I believed we were being kind. I believe you were trying to be. But it came across as pity." "It did. I never intended that." "I know." The truth was that she had not been deliberately cruel. She had accepted the story Ethan had presented. The person who needed the deepest examination was sitting beside her. Then Ethan's father stood. He walked toward the Christmas tree and watched the lights for several seconds. "I think everyone should understand something." His voice carried quiet authority. "I asked our attorney to prepare that agreement." Ethan looked surprised. "I know." "No." His father turned. "You don't." I did not prepare it because I believed Emily wanted your money. Everyone looked confused. I prepared it because I needed to know whether my son had started believing money was the only thing worth protecting. Ethan stared at him. Dad? I've watched you change during the last 3 years. His father did not raise his voice. He did not need to. You stopped calling your grandmother after she entered assisted living. Ethan looked away. You criticized your cousin's wedding because it was not held at an expensive venue. Silence. You laughed at your college roommate for driving an old truck. Another silence. And tonight. He looked toward my coat. You introduced a good man as though he were a problem that needed to be managed. Ethan's shoulders lowered. I didn't mean. His father interrupted. I know what you meant. That is what disappoints me. I don't think you understood what it revealed about you. Emily reached for my hand. I noticed it too. Ethan looked at her. You never told me. I did. When? The waitress. He frowned. The woman who spilled water. He remembered. You apologized to me because dinner took longer. Emily shook her head. You never apologized to her. Ethan lowered his eyes. And when Dad's truck broke down, you offered to buy another. I was trying to help. No. Emily looked directly at him. You offered to choose one. You wanted him driving something you would not be embarrassed to park beside. Nobody disagreed. Nobody could. For nearly a minute, Ethan stared at the floor. Then he stood and walked to the front door. He picked up my old brown coat. He carried it back carefully. Almost reverently. I'm ashamed. His voice trembled. I looked at this coat. He held it in both hands. And I thought it told me who you were? He laughed bitterly. It never occurred to me that maybe. He looked into my eyes. It was telling me who I was. That sentence settled over the room like fresh snow. His father slowly nodded. I've been waiting years to hear you say something like that. Ethan handed me the coat. I'm sorry, Richard. I smiled faintly. Try again. He looked confused. What? You've called me Richard for nearly 3 years. He hesitated. Then, for the first time, he said, I'm sorry, Dad. Emily began crying. Not dramatic tears. Relieved tears. The kind that appear after someone has been holding their breath for too long. I stood and embraced Ethan. He held me tightly. Not because I was a retired general. Not because I had money. Because for the first time, I believe he saw me as the father of the woman he loved. Nothing more. Nothing less. When we sat again, Ethan reached for the envelope. He removed the agreement and looked toward Emily. I don't want you signing this tonight. His mother looked surprised. But Ethan shook his head. No. Then he looked at me. I need to understand something. What? How do you spend nearly 40 years becoming one of the most respected officers in the army? He glanced at the old watch. And then live as though none of it mattered? I smiled. Because it didn't. He frowned. I don't understand. It mattered while I was serving. But the day I retired, I was no longer a general. I pointed toward the walnut box beneath the tree. That is why I carved those words. Ethan, read them again. Family is not built by money. It is built by showing up. One day your business will belong to someone else. Ethan nodded. One day my medals may belong inside a museum. Silence. One day every dollar any of us owns will belong to another person. The room became perfectly still. So what remains? Nobody answered. I did. The people who remember how we treated them. Ethan's father rested one hand on his son's shoulder. I do not care whether you marry into wealth. He looked directly at Ethan. I care whether you become the kind of man worthy of your wife. Tears moved down Ethan's face. I have a lot to repair. You do, I said gently. But recognizing that is where real leadership begins. For the first time that evening, Christmas no longer felt like a courtroom. It felt like a family learning how to tell the truth. Sometimes truth is the most difficult gift waiting beneath the tree. It is also the one most capable of changing a life. Christmas ended differently than any of us expected. Nobody shouted. Nobody stormed out. No glass shattered. No dramatic declaration destroyed the evening. Instead, embraces lasted longer. Voices became quieter. And everyone left carrying something invisible. Perspective. 3 days later, Ethan called me. I nearly allowed the call to go to voicemail. Not because I was angry. Because I wanted him to think before speaking again. When I answered, he remained quiet for several seconds. "Hi, Dad." I smiled. "Good morning. I hope I'm not bothering you." "You aren't. Could I stop by?" "Of course. I don't want Emily to come." That surprised me. "Why?" "Because this conversation is between us." I looked through the kitchen window toward the maple tree Margaret planted years earlier. "I'll make coffee." 1 hour later, my old pickup sat beside Ethan's polished sport utility vehicle. He stepped out carrying 2 paper bags. Breakfast sandwiches. Coffee from the diner I visited every Tuesday. "I thought you would prefer something familiar." "I do." We sat at my kitchen table. For several minutes, neither of us touched the food. "I haven't slept much." "I imagined you had not. I keep replaying Christmas." "So do I." He looked around the kitchen. The older cabinets. The worn wooden table. Margaret's antique cookie jar on the counter. "I spent 3 years trying to understand why you live this way." I waited. "I thought it was because you had no choice." He looked around again. "But you chose this." "I did." "Why?" I stood and walked into the hallway. When I returned, I carried an old photograph. Margaret and I stood beside our first house. It was barely 1,200 square feet. The paint needed work. The front porch leaned. We looked happier than 2 people had any right to be. I handed Ethan the photograph. "That house cost everything we had." He studied it. "You look young." I was. "You look happy." I was. "What happened after that?" "We paid it off." He laughed. "No, I mean what changed?" "We realized something." "What?" "The happiest years of our marriage happened before we owned very much. We spent decades earning more. But we never became happier than we were inside that little house." I touched the edge of the photograph. "So after retirement, you stopped chasing things?" "No." I looked at him. "I started protecting peace." Ethan stared into his coffee. "I've been chasing the wrong finish line." "I think you have been running someone else's race." That sentence stayed with him. I could see it. After another silence, he reached inside his jacket. "I brought something." He handed me another envelope. I smiled. "I'm beginning to believe envelopes follow you." He laughed. "I deserve that." Inside was the original premarital agreement. Every page carried a large diagonal stamp. Void. I looked at him. "I asked the attorney to destroy the signed original." "You did not have to." "I know. I wanted to." He hesitated. "Emily and I met with another attorney." "Oh?" "We are preparing new estate documents." I waited. "They protect both of us equally." "That sounds fair." "They include something else." "What?" "A charitable foundation." I looked surprised. "For veterans?" He nodded. "And for military families dealing with long deployments." Emotion tightened my throat. Margaret would have loved that. Winter slowly gave way to spring. The wedding was postponed by 4 months. Not because anyone demanded it. Because Ethan asked for time. "I want to earn this marriage," he told Emily. She agreed. During those months, I watched another man begin to emerge. Not overnight. Real change rarely occurs overnight. It happened quietly. Through repetition. Through choices made when nobody was praising him. He began visiting a nearby veterans hospital with me once each month. The first visit was uncomfortable. He admitted he did not know what to say. "You do not need to say anything." "Then what do I do?" Listen. So he listened. He listened to men who had buried friends. Women who spent birthdays overseas. A Marine still carrying guilt from 20 years earlier. An Army medic who could not stop speaking about a little girl he treated in Afghanistan. Driving home, Ethan remained silent. Finally, he spoke. I've spent years admiring people who made money. I forgot to admire people who sacrificed. The changes continued in smaller ways. He called his grandmother every Sunday. He returned to the restaurant where the waitress spilled water. He learned her name was Martha. Whenever we visited, he greeted her before she greeted us. One afternoon, I watched him help an elderly man load groceries into a vehicle. No camera. No social media post. No audience. Only kindness. That was when I knew the apology had become real. Character is not measured by what someone says during one emotional conversation. It is measured by what he does after everyone stops watching. The wedding finally arrived on a warm Saturday in late May. It was not held at an expensive country club. Emily chose a small white church Margaret had always loved. Fresh flowers decorated the aisle. Neighbors filled the pews. Veterans from my old unit sat beside Ethan's business partners. Nobody asked to earn more. Nobody compared watches. Everyone had come to celebrate two people beginning a life together. That morning, I reached for my suit. Then noticed the old brown coat hanging beside it. I carried it with me. Not because I needed it. Because it reminded me of Margaret. It reminded me of Christmas. And it reminded me that appearances never tell the complete story. When I arrived, Ethan saw me across the parking lot. He walked directly toward me. Before speaking, he wrapped me inside a genuine embrace. Not polite. Not formal. Family. He stepped back and smiled. I almost forgot. What? He reached inside my coat pocket. I laughed. What are you doing? He removed my old military field watch. I had it serviced. I examined it. The scratches remained. The faded numbers remained. Only the movement had been repaired. It still looks old. Ethan smiled. It should. I looked at him. Thank you. He shook his head. No. His eyes filled slightly. Thank you, Dad. Just before the ceremony, he leaned closer. I respected your rank the night I learned who you were. He paused. But I've spent the last 4 months learning to respect the man you chose to be. I placed one hand on his shoulder. That is the only promotion that matters now. People later asked whether that Christmas dinner changed our family. They were asking the wrong question. The dinner did not change us. It revealed us. It revealed my daughter's quiet courage. It revealed a father's disappointment in his son. It revealed a young man's pride. It revealed how quickly people confuse modest living with failure. And thankfully, it revealed Ethan's willingness to confront the man he had become. Real wealth was never my pension. It was never the investment accounts. The house. The cabin. Or the trust documents. Real wealth was sitting inside that church and watching two families become one. Not because money connected them. Because truth had finally made room for grace. Margaret had been right all along. If you want to know someone's character, let them believe you have nothing. But there was another lesson hidden inside that one. Sometimes a person who fails the test does not need to be discarded immediately. Sometimes he needs to see his failure clearly enough that he can no longer hide from it. Then he must decide. Defend the person he has become. Or begin the difficult work of becoming better. Ethan chose to become better. Not perfectly. Not immediately. But honestly. That mattered more to me than any flawless first impression. The handmade walnut box now sits inside Emily and Ethan's home. They keep important family photographs inside it. Letters. Their wedding invitation. The first document from their Veterans Foundation. And a photograph of Margaret and me beside our tiny first house. The words carved into the lid remain visible. Family is not built by money. It is built by showing up. My old brown coat still hangs inside my closet. The repaired sleeve remains. The zipper still sticks sometimes. Ethan has never suggested replacing it again. Whenever he sees it, he smiles. Not because the coat changed. Because he did. The field watch remains on my wrist. The crystal is still scratched. The numbers are still faded. It keeps perfect time. I have learned that the things carrying the deepest meaning rarely look impressive to strangers. A worn coat. An old watch. A handmade box. A modest home. A quiet apology. A changed habit. Money can purchase comfort. It can purchase security. It can build houses and protect futures. But it cannot purchase character. Character is built in the moments when someone has the opportunity to feel superior and chooses humility instead. It is built when a person apologizes without being forced. When he changes without an audience. When he treats the waitress with the same respect he gives the wealthy client. When he calls the grandmother who has nothing to offer except love. One day, Ethan's business will belong to someone else. One day, my medals may be placed behind glass. One day, every dollar Margaret and I saved will pass into different hands. Even the house will eventually belong to another generation. None of us truly keeps anything forever. What remains is the way people felt in our presence. Whether they felt respected. Whether they felt seen. Whether our success made us generous or cruel. Whether our power made us responsible or arrogant. Whether we showed up when love required something inconvenient. That Christmas, Ethan believed the envelope would protect his family from financial loss. Instead, it protected his future from something far more dangerous. The man he was slowly becoming. It forced him to see himself before pride became permanent. And it gave him the opportunity to change before he married my daughter. That was the greatest gift any of us received. Not the watch. Not the trust. Not the money. The opportunity to become better before it was too late. If this story reminds you of someone in your own life, remember this. Appearances are often the least truthful part of a person. The old truck may belong to the wealthiest man in the room. The expensive suit may hide insecurity. The quiet person may have led thousands. And the person you believe needs your pity may possess something far more valuable than anything you could offer. Do not wait until an envelope lands on a Christmas table before examining how you treat people. Do not allow pride to build walls that love must later tear down. And never assume that revealing someone else's worth will excuse the way you treated them before you knew it. Respect people before you know their title. Value them before you know their income. Listen before you know what they can do for you. Because real character is revealed by how you treat someone when you believe they have nothing to offer. Sometimes the greatest victory is not proving someone wrong. It is giving them the truth clearly enough that they finally choose to become right.